Hi everyone, welcome. Today is the first day of this 3-day event during which we'll welcome various speakers. We can start the program with our opening remarks from Solomon Moss, President of the French Tech Community Seoul, and David-Pierre JALICON, Chairman of the French-Korean Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Solomon, it's up to you.
Thank you, Isabelle, and good afternoon to all my friends in Korea, and good morning to all the people who are in France opening up, as well as all the different lovers of technology and of environment that have been able to connect throughout the world. I'm really excited today to be with David-Pierre JALICON and open up this second edition of the Tech4Good Summit. This is a really important summit, and launching this today for a 3-day event is a great way to be able to interact and hear different people speaking about one of the most important points that we're currently facing, which is the social and the environmental impact that we all have to face. I really wanted to thank all our sponsors for being able to participate in this event, support this summit, and be able to make this event realize. Especially Sanofi and Mazar, who are providing a wonderful help and support to the many startups that in fact have applied to the pitching contest, which we're going to be carrying out over the past next 2-3 days, and be able to select one of the happy winners. I wanted to thank also the French Tech, the mother HQ in Paris, France, and also the French Tech Community Fund, which has been an enabler for us to be able to carry out this event. Our partner, the French-Korean Chamber of Commerce, with Mr. JALICON here, and also all the wonderful people who accepted to participate in this forum, to speak, to interact, and which I believe will make this event a really successful and interesting time. France and Korea are sharing many different common areas, and digitalization is one of the key parts. The Green New Deal is something which is incredible and is key for the future of our world. And being able to support the startups and entrepreneurs that will help the world become a better day is one of the key focuses of French Tech. French Tech is the brand for all the French company and for the attractiveness of France, which is doing an incredible job coming up with some incredible new startups, innovation, and new technologies. And the French Tech Seoul, which was launched in 2016, is here to build a bridge between the French and Korean ecosystems, between entrepreneurs, startups, corporates, government officials and representatives, and anyone who loves technology and believes that we can apply this for a better world. We're facing many issues, but technology and digitalization is a key answer for the future. And I will stop here and let David-Pierre follow on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. Good afternoon for Korea, good morning for France, and to all of you wherever you are. I'm very glad to open with Solomon the second edition of Tech4Good, co-organized by the French Tech Seoul and the French-Korean Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Korea. First of all, I really want to thank all the participants of this 3-day edition, Cedric, Secretary of State, the French and the Korean ambassadors, ministry, institutions, enterprise, startup, partner, or dedicated teams, and all of you who make this edition possible despite the current COVID-19 circumstance. This pandemic is the best reminder how much innovation is important if we consider the biotech behind the RNA messenger vaccine or all the QR code application and soon vaccine passport, which help us to navigate in this era of COVID-19. Crises are thoughtful, and it is probably not a coincidence if both relaunch economic plan in France and in Korea, which will be further developed today during this event, are oriented on the same topic: digital, green, social inclusion. That is to say, Tech4Good. Be sure that the FKCCI will do its best to give you access to those programs and will help you and the French Tech to identify the opportunities thanks to our large network in France and in Korea. For example, here, we got guarantee that the digital Green New Deal plan will be open to all, including foreigners. Just before the pandemic, in January 2019, the FKCCI did open its new office and business center, and we announced at that time that we wanted the place to become the maison of the French-Korean business community and will be open to all its entities. In this regard, we are glad to welcome the French Tech Seoul in our premise for their meeting and start up in our business center and in our innovation committee. We have celebrated this month our 400 members and are proud to count among them 23% of entrepreneurs and startups. Be sure that together with French Tech Seoul, we will work to promote and to foster the French-Korean tech ecosystem. France and Korea, as mentioned by Solomon, have a lot of common. We are almost same size in population. We are true democracy, love innovation, but yet sometimes we do not have the same perception regarding tech. I recall, for example, the webinar the FKCCI did organize in June last year to demonstrate how Koreans did develop their tracking system within a legal framework and without infringing the individual freedom. Hopefully, I hope it did help to change the mind of some in France regarding those systems. It reminds us how much knowing each other is the key of good cooperation. I am sure that Tech4Good will participate of it and will enrich us in this regard. As we say, we need two to form a team, and French Tech FKCCI is a good one. We need as well always a second edition to create a regular rendezvous, and with this one, I'm sure that our event Tech4Good will have a good future. Thanks again to all of you for your participation and have a good summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. Thank you, David-Pierre, JALICON. And now I think we can go on to the congratulation remarks from Cedric, French Secretary of State for the Digital Economy and in charge of the French tech movement in France.
Good morning to everybody, and good afternoon for those of you who are in France. I'm really happy and quite honored to have the opportunity to open that second opus of that meeting between the French ecosystem and the Korean ecosystem, and around that theme of Tech for Good that is so important for all of us. What we see during these days, and I was having today lunch with the Korean ambassador here in Paris, is that the innovation is thriving all around the world. This is true in the US, this is true in Asia, this is true in Korea, this is true especially in France. We have been able to design over the past years a dynamics that is at stake within the French tech that is really interesting. Just a figure to embody that. In 2017, when we were elected with President Emmanuel Macron, there were 3 unicorns in France. Yesterday, we announced our 13th unicorns. And we had 3 last year, 3 already this year, and we'll have, I think, a bunch of them on top of that this year. So this is really important because innovation is a key driver to foster economic development, but also to foster employment within our Western world, and also to answer to all the questions that are the great challenges that our societies are facing. I mean, social challenges, societal challenges, environmental challenges, of course. And this is why that the theme that you're tackling this day, Tech for Good, is so important. We need more innovation. We need to focus the innovation in order to respond, to answer to those challenges. But there is also another issue that is at stake around that Tech for Good issue. We see that there are raising questions all among the Western world, in the US, in UK with the Brexit, in France with the Yellow Vest, on the impact of innovation. And on the question that is at stake is, will innovation go along progress? And will progress and innovation come at the same time? We need to persuade our society, to persuade our people that we need more innovation, not less. For that, we need to prove to them that innovation will entail a lot of good within our societies, within our world, especially as far as environmental transition is concerned. And we need that for innovation, for progress, but also for the acceptability of progress within our societies. This is why Tech4Good is a key challenge for the coming years, both for France, Europe, but also Korea. I want to focus on another question. The French tech has been developing quite fast over the past years. What we need to achieve now is to get more international. This is why we are counting so much on the French tech community abroad, especially the French tech community in Seoul and in South Korea, because we need to connect with different ecosystems. We need to offer our entrepreneurs, our founders, our startups new markets in the whole world, and we count on the French tech that is settled abroad. And we need to better connect between the other ecosystems. I think of Korea. We don't have yet here in France companies such as Kakao, such as Naver. And I do think that there are a lot of things that could be taken from the French tech and input within the Korean ecosystem. We saw a few months ago that there are some Korean startups arriving here in France, especially in Station F. We are seeing a lot of new contracts, new agreements that are signed between French incubators like École 42, like Paris Tech & Co, with Korean institutions like the KICED or like the COSME. But what I do think is that we have to accelerate. France and Korea have so many similarities, and from the family point of view that is mine, this is something that I'm at a good place to assess. But we need to accelerate. Our two countries do not know each other enough. This is why we are counting on such event as the one that you are holding today. And this is why we have to accelerate. We have a lot in common. We want to carve our own way between the American power, the Chinese power. Digital is so important for our two nations that we have a lot to do together. Have a good day. I hope that for the next Opus we will be able to meet physically, but I was really happy to have that opportunity.
And I want to say a great thanks to our French Secretary of State for the digital economy for this very great introduction and opening remarks. And I would like now to introduce Mr. Dae-jong, who's the Korean ambassador to France, and who also had some words for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would first like to express my deep gratitude to Mr. JALICON and his colleagues at the French-Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry and French Tech community in Seoul for their hard work to organize this Tech4Good Summit 2021. I look forward to exciting exchanges during the meeting when the past, present, and future cooperation of startups in Korea and France are discussed. My special thanks go to His Excellency Cedric, Secretary of State for the Digital Economy of France, for working tirelessly for an ever-growing ties between our two countries. And His Excellency Philippe, Ambassador of France to Korea, who spared no effort for strengthening our cooperation. As we all know very well, the entire world is now faced with an unprecedented situation. We have urgent need to not only overcome the economic crisis triggered by COVID-19, but we also need to come up with creative responses to deal with social, economic, and environmental problems around the world. In this regard, I believe that today's gathering is all the more timely and meaningful, since our common strive to strengthen cooperation between our two technology industries is a task that goes far beyond our two countries' bilateral boundaries. Korea and France are increasingly on the same page in grappling with the various challenges of the 21st century. Korea is seeking digital innovation, a green economic transition, and an inclusive economic recovery. France, for its part, is promoting digital and ecological transition as well as solidarity. Under the circumstances, startups are required to play a substantial role in our common endeavors. With this in mind, encouraging a strong cooperation between the startups of the two countries will certainly have a ripple effect on further accomplishments. For instance, Korean companies like Naver and Samsung invest in French startups to develop new technologies. BPI France and Korean Venture Investment Corporation has made a mutual fund to invest in promising startups in our two countries. Discussions are also underway to establish the Korea Startup Center in Paris, which will play a similar role to the French tech community in Seoul. Korea, with its dynamic IT technologies and young talents, and France, with its outstanding human resources and competitiveness in core science technology, can produce great mutual benefits while serving for a better future common to all humanity. I am confident that startups from our two countries working together can contribute to bringing solutions to major challenges of our time, like climate change, social inequalities, and youth unemployment. I hope today's summit will serve as a springboard for our future collaboration, as well as a bridge to connect startup ecosystems in our two countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. So now, thanks that we all had those great opening remarks from everyone, I would like to now start the first session of our event. So for this first session, we really wanted to go into what we have in common between France and Korea on all of those Tech4Society, Tech4Earth, and Tech4Good project. And one that we have in common is that this year, especially following the crisis that we all know, France and Korea both worked on different plans and policies to go further on all of those topics. So in France, we had the France Relance plans, and in Korea, we had the Korean New Deal. So today, our great speakers are gonna all discuss about all of those initiatives in France and in Korea, and how government is trying hard to bring everyone together to go forward on this. So first, I would like to introduce the ambassador of France to Korea, Mr. Philippe LEFORT. Philippe, it's to you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente 여러분, 안녕히 계세요. Philippe LEFORT입니다. 프랑스에서 Juan. Voilà, it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you virtually, with all of you today for this second edition of the Tech4Good Summit. First, of course, I would like, as my predecessors, the previous speakers, thank and congratulate the organization, the French Tech Seoul and the French-Korean Chamber of Commerce for organizing this summit with such a rich and diverse program despite the context. The first edition was held in November 2019 on the sidelines of the Come Up event, and it was a real success. It brought together 250 people, institutions, entrepreneurs, and big companies around the role of technological innovation in the challenges of tomorrow, such as climate change, of course, reduction of inequalities, education, health, mobility, and accessibility. The event could benefit then from the support of the High Commissioner for Social and Solidarity Economy and Social Innovation, Monsieur Christophe Itier, and received financial support for the French Tech Community Fund. And the second edition will be even more successful because we understand that we expect more than 60 attendees despite the impossibility to travel and the jet lag with Korea. It shows that France and Korea ecosystems are extremely dynamic and partnership opportunities are important between our innovative players. It also reveals what Tech4Good means for both countries. And the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the need to accelerate the digital transition in our countries, but also the obligation that we have to work together to increase cooperation and collaboration to put innovation, technology, and economics at the service of humanity and common good. The cooperation between France and Korea is a success for more than 25 years now, but thanks to our respective recovery plans, we can even go further. I would like to tell you, as I was asked a little bit more about the update of this plan in France. Indeed, as you said, Mrs. President, France Relance and the Korean New Deal share many of common goals, so as developing more innovative and competitive industries while promoting a greener and inclusive economy. This gives us a great opportunity to pursue and deepen the cooperation for the growth of our respective economies and for developing Tech4Good. As you know, France made huge efforts since 2017 to become more attractive by voting on many pro-business reforms. These efforts have paid, as France rose the first place in Europe for foreign direct investment in 2019 and showed a pretty good resilience in 2020 despite the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been possible thanks to France's assets that are well known to you, which is our great infrastructures, a large market, a qualified manpower with more than 1 million engineers, strong reform agenda, especially in labor law and taxes. Let's go now on the immediate future. First, you may know that we are in advance in our campaign of vaccination on COVID-19. The objective of the government was to have 10 million people vaccinated at the end of April, and we reached about 13 million. Currently, we should be around 17, 18 million. We hope to vaccinate the half of our population by the end of June and the whole population during the summer. So we'll see the end of this nightmare, and I'm pretty much confident that we will be out of this in the coming weeks and months, which gives all the possibility to develop our recovery plan, France Relance, which, as you know, is based on 3 pillars, and I would like to be a bit more specific about it. First pillar, as you know, is the green transition. Our vision is that green recovery policies can have a positive effect on our economies, that generate productivity gains and job creation. We expect about 1 million jobs within 8 years connected to the investments in the field of energy transitions. We also aim to make France a leader in ecological transition and becoming the first major European nation to be carbon neutral by 2050. That is why we will dedicate 13 billion on this pillar, including 1.2 billion to decarbonate our industry, 1.2 billion to develop everyday green mobility, and 7 billion euro over 10 years to develop green hydrogen. As you know, we believe in France in nuclear energy. We are now exploring the way with current technology to neutralize the issue of nuclear waste. France will be certainly one of the best places for cheap electricity, therefore favorable also for energy-intensive industries, but also all what is connected to the mobility based on hydrogen, which needs electricity. This is our first pillar. The second pillar is competitiveness and resilience, and we will dedicate 34 billion on this, 20 billion over the year 2021-2022 as a permanent reduction of taxes. 1 billion euros in order to relocate industrial production in France and avoid disruptions of critical goods supplies, all what is connected to the famous chains of values. And 11 billion on investment in key technologies such as aerospace, digital, hydrogen, healthcare. I would like to add that all those financing is dedicated to France and European companies also, but foreign companies. Korean companies are eligible to those funds, on par with French companies. The third pillar, and you see how much it's somehow connects with the plans of the current government, is dedicated to the social and territorial cohesion. There will be 36 billion euros dedicated to support companies for employment and training, especially in strategic sectors, and to develop public infrastructures throughout the territories. We want, as Minister O said a moment ago, to dedicate a significant part of France Relance on supporting new markets, emerging goods and tech and techs, and invest in our future. The fourth investment plan for the future will dedicate 20 billion over the next 4 years to support specifically the ecosystem of research and innovation. We know that our startups are essential for the competitiveness of the whole ecosystem, as they bring the creativity needed to meet new needs and they create jobs. For this reason, France did strongly support its tech sector during the pandemic. France responded decisively in 2020 to support the tech ecosystem through two kinds of support. First, we dedicated an emergency support plan for startups totaling nearly 4 billion in March, including the extension of the eligibility of state-guaranteed loans to startups, the acceleration of the repayment of tax credits, and the creation of the so-called French Tech Bridge Fund for bridge financing. All those measures has enabled the French tech ecosystem to show resilience, as Korean tech ecosystem has done. As the French Secretary of State of the Digital Economy, Mr. O, has recalled, many agreements exist between France and Korean innovation players. In the wake of these agreements, all startups are now operating beyond the borders. Most of them are members of the French Tech Seoul. I signed myself last November a memorandum of understanding with the KISED to promote bilateral cooperation between France and Korea and to help promising startups based on technology. That is exactly what I am doing by participating to this second edition of Tech4Good Summit. I am convinced that this summit will become, over the time, a key event in the franco-Korean cooperation in innovation. Be assured that the French Embassy in Seoul is fully committed to support the development of cooperation between Korea and French companies and other actors in the innovation sector. I wish you an excellent 2021 Tech4Good Summit, and as I believe that there will be many more in the coming years. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. LEFORT, for your kind words and for explaining how we can get support from the embassy.
Then first, good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining this session of Tech4Good Summit. Then we know that France and Korea, through their recovery plans, their innovation policy, and the priority of their public policies, are two countries strongly committed to the tech used for improving our lives, our society, and our environment. This Tech4Good Summit is based on the conviction we share at the FKCCI and at French Tech that this commitment will be enhanced and reinforced by international cooperation. Political impetus is essential to provide a satisfactory response to those global challenges, but to be efficiently implemented, it must be relayed by private initiative, by entrepreneurs and companies who are the main actors to lead the change and rebuild our post-COVID world on fundamental values as social inclusion, sustainable development, and health for all the people. This is our daily work at the FKCCI, as our objective is to build bridges between France and Korea and to establish a solid foundation to promote bilateral cooperation. In particular, as one of our main missions is to support French companies and Korean companies in their international development, we can see every day that companies' efforts to go international has not weakened and has even strengthened despite the sanitary crisis. And we see that France and Korea are more and more considered as two complementary countries, two natural partners who offer many opportunities for French and Korean companies to provide together innovative solutions which can be implemented, of course, in France, in Korea, and beyond. As outlined by the Minister Cedric and the Ambassador Philippe LEFORT, France has a very successful innovation policy and startup ecosystem with the emergence of strong actors as new licorns. Also, France has a long historical and philosophical tradition based on the idea that the technical progress is closely associated with the improvement of the society. The French philosopher Condorcet has shown that the progress of humanity needs a universal education for the people as a whole. And as the most innovative technology will be meaningless if it is not embedded in an inclusive and universal logic, the following session of the day will be devoted to the Tech4Society with education, social mobility, and gender parity. During the second day, we'll deal with environmental issues, damages caused by humans to our planet in recent decades, has shown that technical progress can have a negative impact on our ecosystem. From this point of view, this Tech4Good Summit aims to promote and strengthen the link between innovation and positive impact. The third day will be devoted to health, as the sanitary crisis reminds us how the tech for health is crucial for our lives and our societies. Korea follows the same logic and promotes the same priorities. The very ambitious recovery plan, the so-called Korean New Deal, is based on the vision of an inclusive society and a low-carbon economy through its two parts, the Digital New Deal to promote innovation and the Green New Deal to accelerate the ecological transition. In particular, we'll find the 10 key projects of the Korean New Deal through all the sessions during these 3 days. For example, the Green and Smart School project is related to the next session on the social mobility and education. The green energy and eco-friendly mobility projects are the topics of the second day on Tech4Earth. And the Smart Healthcare project is related to the last day on the Tech4Health. Our first session on New Deal and public policy aims to show that there is a strong convergence between France and Korean recovery plans. The diversity and the quality of the speakers during all the sessions we have organized for this Tech4Good Summit will illustrate the immense potential of the cooperation between France and Korea. This is the reason why, in the margin of the sessions, a large space will be left for networking and virtual meetings, as we wanted to allow all our participants to know more about each other, to exchange together, whether you are in France, in Korea, or elsewhere. We wanted to go beyond a simple series of conferences and show that the sanitary crisis does not hamper international cooperation, but does empowered and inspired us to implement proper tools to facilitate and encourage this cooperation through new forms of collaboration and exchange. And to finish, I would like to thank again all the speakers who agreed to participate to this Tech4Good Summit and who bring its exceptional dimension, all the sponsors and partners who made it possible to organize such ambitious event, the startup will participate in the pitch contest and will show the vitality of the impactful startup ecosystem, the members of the jury, and all the teams who have prepared this great event for you. Then thank you again for your participation, and I will let you to continue if we have Mrs. Ban with us.
Good afternoon and good morning to those in France. Very nice to meet you. My name is Jeehyun Bang. I'm Deputy Director of Venture Capital and Startup Policies Division in the Ministry of SMEs and Startup of Republic of Korea. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this conference. I have heard this conference in 2019 when it first launched the event, and I loved the title immediately. So Tech4Good. I think it's the wonderful name for the conference because I think support new technologies and innovation that can make the world a better place. can be, I think, the fundamental purpose of any government or any organization. So I'm very happy to be part of it today, this year. So I believe I'm the only government official from the Korean side today. So I feel that I'm very responsible to introduce Korea's policy very well, which is related to the technology and startups. And today what I want to focus is Korea's New Deal policy and how it would affect Korea's startup scene. The Korean New Deal is a blueprint of national strategy that effectively shows where the Korean economy is heading to. And this will set the foundation of Korea's future in, we say, the next 100 years. So the main two pillars of the plan are there is a digital New Deal and also a Green New Deal. And the overarching basis of these two policies are there's a stronger safety net. And this can be to promote a more inclusive society. So last week, I visited a startup called This Is Engineering, and this is a drone company. So it's a very new startup, relatively new startup that started its business in 2016. And it has now only one model of drone now. But the aim, the vision of this company is, it is actually aiming to make all the mankind to realize their dream of flying in the sky with its new technology and its personal air vehicle. So the future of that is the future of mobility, and this is also a future of this green mobility. And I think the Korean New Deal is to actually boost these sort of companies and to this sort of areas to move toward a net zero society by 2050. It focuses on a tradition of infrastructures, decentralized energy, and innovation in the industry. So the Korean government will invest over 70 trillion won, which is nearly 50 billion euros, to create a more than 600,000 jobs in new technology and this industry area. So that is one of the main pillar of Korean New Deal, which is Green New Deal. On the other pillar, Digital New Deal, is, I think it's rather straightforward because it is to strengthen the use of web-based services, both in private and public sector, and to accelerate the transformation of economic and social structures with better digital capability. So it includes the plan of investing of around 40 billion euros to create 560,000 jobs in the area, in relative area. So Korea New Deal has been announced on July 14th of 2020 amid this COVID pandemic situation. So obviously it has to do with the recovery of the economy from pandemic. But it's not only to recover the economy, but it's also to show the right passage that the Korean economy should aim for to achieve a sustainable and long-term growth. And boosting its startup scenes and fostering its related area is surely the most important part of New Deal, because this startup scene is actually creating jobs and it developed industries and technology in a very digitally and environmentally friendly way. So if I go back to the name of this conference again, the Tech4Good, I think the narrow term of this, I think it could mean the technologies that can help dealing with social challenges like pollution, climate change, or jobs for people with disability, etc. But I think in a wider definition, the tech for good is not just those technologies. I think it can refer to all technologies because the reason of creating any kind of new technology is to improve the current situation, to improve the current world, and to make sure whether the tech is good or not is, I think that is the role of the government. So what the government can lead is to, what the government should do is to ensure whether the tech is being used in a good way. So some people might say that economic development it should be driven by the private sector, and the government sector just should let it be and let it just go. But as a public official of a Korean government, which has experienced the power of planning and the power of policy, and also the synergy effect fueled by the government initiatives from our history, I think I would argue for the importance of the government role. And I believe Korean government would do its best to make tech for good, and hope Korean New Deal, along with other all startup and venture capital policies, work very well to make Korea and also the world a better place to live for more people. Well, thank you very much today, and hope the conference will have a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind word, Mrs. Bong. And yeah, we're really hoping that along with the French government, along with the Korean government, all of our ecosystem of startup and innovation in Korea and in France will be able to work together and go further on all of those topics. So this is on those great words from everyone that we end up the first session of today.